My name is Emma Callahan, and I thought I had found a sliver of peace, my own tiny apartment in my parents' duplex, just enough to breathe. But the ground gave out beneath me the morning they handed my life to my older sister like it was a hand-me-down sweater. One moment I had keys and dignity, the next I had neither, and Rachel had everything. Betrayal doesn't always come with yelling. Sometimes it sips tea and smirks while you drown. Cleveland winters have a way of clinging to the bones. Even indoors, the draft in my parents' old duplex carried through the cracks of the kitchen window, curling around my ankles like a warning. I was stirring my coffee when Mom said it casually, like she was reading the weather. "Emma, honey, we've decided you'll need to move out by the end of next month." I blinked at her, spoon mid-air like I had misheard. "What?" Dad didn't look up from the classifieds. Mom gave a tight smile, the kind that never touched her eyes. "Rachel's apartment's lease is up. The kids need more space. It just makes sense. It just makes sense." I could feel the blood draining from my face. I lived in the converted attic apartment above their garage, nothing fancy, but it was mine. A space I cleaned, paid utilities on, cooked in. It wasn't just a roof. It was where I built back my life after a devastating breakup and a layoff. I'd painted the walls yellow last fall. I planted lavender on the sill. Rachel, my older sister, had never so much as set foot in it. And yet there she sat at the far end of the kitchen table, her designer scarf tossed over one shoulder like she was posing for a magazine cover. She sipped her tea with maddening calm, her lips tugged into a smug little smile. I couldn't stop staring at her nails, freshly manicured, painted a glossy blood red. I tried to steady my voice. "You're kicking me out for her." Rachel raised an eyebrow like I was being dramatic. "Emma, please, you've been squatting up there long enough. It's not exactly the Ritz." Dad folded his paper. "Rachel has 2 kids, you're just one person, let's be reasonable." Reasonable. Like I hadn't spent months scrubbing mold out of that place. Like I hadn't turned down going out with friends so I could cover the electricity bill when the heater died. Like I hadn't started to feel, finally, that I could breathe again. "Are you serious?" My voice cracked. "You're taking away my home to reward her chaos." Mom winced. "Don't make this ugly." Rachel chimed in sweetly. "You can crash at Maya's place, right? Isn't she your bestie? Besides, you're always saying how you want to move forward in life. Consider this a push." It was like watching someone hand over your diary to a stranger, every page exposed. I stood up so fast my chair screeched across the floor. "I can't believe you. I cannot believe this." Rachel rolled her eyes, draining the last of her tea. Drama, as always. There was a second, just a sliver, where I expected one of them to say, "Wait, maybe this isn't fair." But silence hung heavier than the snow outside. My hand wrapped around the car keys in my pocket like a lifeline. I didn't even remember grabbing them. "I hope the walls still echo," I muttered, voice trembling, "with everything I went through up there." And then I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry, not yet. But every step toward my car felt like being erased, one footprint at a time. Out in the driveway, the wind bit at my cheeks. My breath puffed out in frantic clouds. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew it had to be anywhere but here. Because if I stayed another second, I would shatter. Maya didn't ask questions when I showed up at her door that night with a duffel bag and puffy eyes. She just opened her arms, and I folded into them like a crumpled note. She had this way of knowing when words would only make things worse. Her place wasn't much, barely a studio with one window that opened crookedly and a futon that doubled as her bed. She handed me the floor and a rolled-up yoga mat like it was a guest suite. I tried to smile as I laid down that first night, but the cold from the floor seeped into my spine. I stared at the ceiling and wondered how it all unraveled so fast. Just last week, I was folding laundry in my own space, sipping chamomile tea with Netflix humming in the background. Now I was borrowing socks and Googling cheap room rentals Cleveland under a blanket that didn't quite reach my feet. But there was no room for mourning. Not when rent was looming, and my savings had already been thinned by dental bills and bad timing. By morning, I was at the coffee table. Well, a milk crate Maya used for books, with my laptop open, resumed tabs scattered like confetti. I updated my profile on every gig site I could find. By lunch, I had 3 interviews. By the next week, I had 3 jobs. Job 1, morning barista at Bean Leaf Cafe. The manager, Tim, liked that I could froth milk and make eye contact at the same time. The tips were decent if you smiled hard enough. Job 2, delivery driver for Food Loop, The app that didn't care if your car door barely closed as long as you got hot wings to the suburbs by 8:30. Job 3. Assistant to a frazzled junior paralegal at a local law office, where I mostly alphabetized files and kept the printer from jamming. The schedule was brutal. My day started at 5:30 a.m. and ended somewhere around 1 a.m. the next day, depending on delivery orders. I slept 4 hours a night, if that. My hair lived in a ponytail, my legs ached, and I developed a twitch in my right eye from staring at screens for too long. But it was mine. Every dollar, every ache, every skipped meal, it was mine. Maya offered to spot me for a room deposit once. I thanked her and said no, not because I wasn't tempted, but because I knew how fast pride could dissolve when you leaned too hard on someone else. I'd already been evicted from comfort once. I wasn't about to owe anyone the floor beneath me again. Each night, I pulled my phone out and tapped notes into a folder I titled Operation Freedom. Rent goals. Job leads. A fantasy list of items I'd buy once I had my own place again. A kettle that didn't leak. A chair that didn't fold. A plant named something ridiculous like Clyde. I found corners of joy in exhaustion. I played trivia games with customers while frothing milk. I listened to audiobooks between deliveries, voices reminding me that stories still existed beyond my own survival. And sometimes, in the quiet of Maya's apartment when she was working late shifts, I'd let myself cry, just a little, into the pillow she lent me. I didn't speak to my parents. Not once. Every message from the family group chat lit up my phone like static I refused to hear. Rachel's updates came like clockwork, pictures of the kids adjusting beautifully to their new nest, birthday plans, casserole recipes. One photo showed my old kitchen with Rachel's ceramic owl salt shakers on the windowsill I had painted yellow. Another captured my lavender plant in full bloom, its pot now rebranded as Rachel's Healing Herbs. I almost threw my phone, but instead I looked at Maya's busted ceiling fan, still spinning despite the noise it made, and thought, I'm still spinning too. That week, I visited 6 rental rooms. One had a bathroom that smelled like regret. Another had a landlord who winked too often. Finally, I found a shared house with 3 other girls, all working night shifts like me. The room was barely big enough for a twin mattress, but it had a window, and for $300 a month it came with peace. I moved in with a suitcase, my laptop, and a half-broken French press. The first night, I made myself black coffee and sat cross-legged on the floor, staring out at the city like I was seeing it for the first time. It wasn't home, but it was a start. The grind continued. I memorized bus schedules, learned to nap upright, and taught myself to stretch out a single bag of rice over 5 days. I began collecting moments, tiny victories. A coworker remembering my name, a 5-star delivery review, a half-hour nap uninterrupted. One day, on my rare day off, I wandered into a discount store and bought a small corkboard. I pinned a single sheet to it, the words handwritten in thick black marker. My own home. Underneath, I drew a stick-figure version of myself on a tiny porch, arms raised. That night, I hung the board beside my mattress and whispered, "Not yet, but soon." There's a strange kind of comfort in routine, even when it's slowly unraveling you. My life narrowed into loops, wake, work, nap, repeat. Morning shifts blurred into night deliveries, and sometimes I'd find myself halfway to a client's address before realizing I hadn't eaten that day, or the day before. In the house I now shared with 3 girls, Melissa, Jasmine, and Kay, our schedules overlapped like mismatched puzzle pieces. We passed each other like ships in the night, swapping tired hellos and instant noodles. I stopped buying real groceries. Everything came in cans or boxes. I ate standing up, reheating soup 3 days in a row. There was no space for ceremony. Self-care became a laughable concept. My hair hadn't been properly washed in a week. My nails chipped and stayed chipped. I used to have a skincare routine. Now I was lucky if I remembered deodorant before work. I canceled on Maya 3 times in a row. The 4th time she didn't ask again. I didn't blame her. It's hard to stay close when you're constantly running on empty. Friendship requires presence. I barely had presence of mind. I missed birthdays. I missed weekends. I missed versions of myself I hadn't seen in months. The one who liked reading. The one who wore earrings. The one who laughed without calculating how much time it would cost. At night, I stared at the vision board taped beside my bed. My own home still read in bold letters, now surrounded by scribbled goals and scratched-out notes. But the stick figure Emma, drawn with smiling eyes and raised arms, mocked me some nights, because it felt further away, not closer. The money I saved barely kept up with bills. Every time I thought I'd made a dent, something ate it. A phone repair, a prescription, a co-worker's birthday gift I couldn't say no to. I was trying so hard to look like I had it together that I forgot to let myself fall apart. My parents hadn't reached out. Not once. But Rachel sent occasional updates to the family group chat, always with that passive-aggressive sweetness she'd perfected. Big day. Took the boys to the park down the street. Emma always said she loved that trail. It's so nice living here. Or, can't believe we fit the new sectional in the attic space. Fits like it was meant to be female. The attic space. My space. I muted the chat after the third update, but I still peeked sometimes, like poking a bruise to make sure it still hurt. It always did. One Thursday afternoon, I was folding uniforms at the law office when my stomach twisted into knots. I hadn't eaten all day. The floor swayed under me like a dock in a storm. I sat down right there on the carpet, files half sorted beside me, and pressed my forehead to my knees. I didn't cry. I didn't have the energy. I just waited for the feeling to pass. That night, I microwaved white rice and sat at the tiny desk in my room, forcing myself to eat one forkful at a time. I pulled out my phone, opened the calculator app, and stared at the numbers. If I kept this pace, if no emergencies hit and I skipped every luxury, I could maybe, just maybe, have enough for a down payment in 10 months. 10 months. I dropped my head onto the desk and exhaled like I was deflating. Sometimes I wondered why I didn't just ask for help. One text to Mom and I could probably go back. Maybe not to the attic, but somewhere nearby. They'd act like nothing ever happened. Rachel would smirk and I'd get a guest towel, but I couldn't do it. Not because of pride, but because I knew what it would cost. It would cost the part of me that had clawed her way through darkness without them. The part of me that still believed I could live on my own terms. The world wasn't soft, but neither was I anymore. Some nights I'd take the long way home after my last delivery just to see lights in strangers' windows, little table lamps glowing, families watching TV, a cat stretched across a sill. I'd make up stories for them. That couple in apartment 3B just got engaged. The old man in the corner house bakes cookies on Thursdays. The woman in the loft owns 3 succulents named Larry, Moe, and Curly. I think it helped to imagine normalcy, to believe it was possible. One rainy Sunday, I passed a small yellow bungalow with peeling paint and a crooked mailbox. Something about it stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't fancy, but it had a little garden patch and the porch light glowed like someone had left it on for me. I snapped a picture. Back home, I printed it and pinned it beside the vision board. My house, I wrote beneath it in shaky script. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I whispered it anyway. My house. And somehow that made it feel a little more real. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of day so nondescript I wouldn't have remembered it otherwise. Rain pinged softly against the law office windows, tapping in lazy rhythms while I alphabetized client files no one had touched in years. My shoes were still damp from the morning's deliveries, and the scent of old paper clung to the air like a forgotten memory. I was elbow-deep in dusty folders when the copier jammed again. "Third time today," muttered Hannah, the junior paralegal I technically reported to. "I swear this machine feeds on suffering." I crouched down, tugging out the paper bits with practiced hands. My nails were ragged, but my movements were smooth. Years of living at the edge made you efficient. That's when I heard it. "Well, you're certainly determined," a voice said behind me, low, dry, amused. I looked up, startled. Standing in the doorway was a tall woman in a navy blue suit, sharp-lined and deliberate, like everything about her had been measured and tailored to mean business. Her hair was streaked with silver, tied back neatly, and her expression was that of someone who'd seen storms and still kept walking. Ms. Lindholm, senior partner. Legend. I scrambled to my feet, wiping toner off my hands. "Just trying to keep the machine alive, ma'am." She tilted her head. "And who are you?" Emma Callahan. I help out afternoons, files and coffee and other things that break." She looked at me for a long moment, not unkindly, just curiously, like she was weighing something. "I've seen you here late. You don't clock out on time." I shrugged. "I figure if I'm already tired, might as well make the hours count." Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in annoyance, but in that way some people smile without showing it. "Follow me." She turned, and I hesitated for just a second before trailing after her, heart thudding like it was announcing a plot twist I hadn't written. Her office was elegant but not flashy. No family photos. Just books, neat stacks of paper, and a single potted plant that looked like it had been alive longer than me. She sat, gestured to the chair across. "I've been needing a part-time administrative assistant," she said. "Someone reliable. You're here more than some of my full-time staff. Would you be interested?" I blinked. My voice caught on the way out. Yes, absolutely. 15 an hour to start, 25 hours a week. Flexible with your schedule, but I expect accuracy and confidentiality. I nodded so hard I might have bruised something. "Yes, ma'am." She looked at me, really looked, and something shifted in the air. Not sympathy, not charity, recognition. "Good, we'll start Monday, talk to HR for paperwork." That was it, no big speech. No inspirational monologue, just a clean, professional yes. I walked out in a daze, my shoes still damp, but suddenly it didn't matter. That night I stood at the microwave with a bowl of rice and canned peas and allowed myself one luxury: butter. Real butter. Maya had given it to me months ago as a joke, for when you finally get a promotion, and I'd kept it in the freezer like a charm. I let it melt slowly, watching the yellow swirl into steam. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. I texted Maya. "Emma, guess who's not folding legal briefs for fun anymore?" Maya. "OMG, tell me everything." Also, I knew it. "You're impossible to ignore." Emma, I think she saw me fixing the copier. Is that my origin story now? Maya, you a suit and a vengeance arc. It tracks. I laughed, actually laughed. Out loud, alone in my room like a human person with a future. I still had 2 other jobs. Rent still sucked. I still slept with socks on because the window leaked cold. But something had changed. Someone in the world saw me as useful, not just convenient. Not someone to be replaced for family optics. Not someone to be mocked for trying. I pinned a new note to my vision board that night. $15 hour, 25 hours week, steady. I drew a tiny paperclip beside it just for flair. Sleep came easier, not because life was fixed, but because for the first time in months, it wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about building. The envelope was gold, thick, glitter-dusted cardstock like something from a wedding catalog. Inside, a matching invitation read: "Queen Rachel's birthday bash, champagne, laughter, and good vibes only." It even had a dress code. Bold glam, no jeans, no neutrals, shine or go home. I almost laughed. Almost. It was hard to tell if the invitation was a peace offering or just another smug performance. Maybe both. Either way, it landed in my mailbox like a dare. I stared at it for 2 days before RSVPing. Not because I wanted to go, but because part of me couldn't let them believe I was hiding. I'd come, I'd smile, I'd survive it. I borrowed a dress from Kay, one of my housemates, something maroon and slightly too tight in the chest. My shoes didn't match, but they were the only pair without cracks. I ironed the dress 3 times, then gave up and let the wrinkles win. I wore my hair up. Simple makeup. No gloss, no glitter, just me, scrubbed and stitched together. As I walked toward my parents' house, every step felt heavier. The sidewalk was the same. The hedge out front still leaned to the left, but everything else had changed. Or maybe I had. Rachel's car sat proudly in the driveway, bigger than I remembered, its bumper sporting a new Mom Boss sticker. Inside, I could hear laughter, clinking glasses, and music thumping lightly through the walls. I rang the bell. The door swung open, and there she was, Rachel, in a gold sequin jumpsuit and heels tall enough to cause injury. Her lipstick was sharp, her hair curled like she'd walked out of a blowout bar ad. Well, she drawled, eyes raking over my outfit. "Didn't think you'd actually come." I forced a smile. "Wouldn't miss it." She stepped aside with theatrical flair, and I entered the house that used to be mine. The living room was drenched in gold and black balloons. A banner stretched across the wall. "Happy birthday, Queen Rachel." Someone had even baked a cake with her face printed in edible frosting. The couch was new, so were the throw pillows. The lavender plant I once nurtured now sat on the kitchen counter, dressed up with ribbons like a pageant contestant. I tried not to look too long. Everything still smelled familiar: lemon cleaner, cinnamon air spray, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage where my role had been cut. "Emma." Mom's voice rose above the chatter. She came over, cheeks flushed from wine, and hugged me too tightly. "You look rested," she said, which was code for alive, surprisingly. Dad waved from the punch bowl, avoiding eye contact. I found a quiet corner near the hallway and sipped soda from a plastic flute. The room buzzed with cousins, neighbors, and Rachel's friends from work. Laughter bounced like confetti. No one noticed me, which in a way was a relief, until Rachel stood up, tapping her glass with a fork. "Speech," someone shouted. She smiled, basking in the spotlight. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate another fabulous year. I'm just so grateful to my parents who gave me and the boys this amazing home," she gestured broadly. "To my village who makes everything possible, and to my sister Emma who proved that even the attic has potential if you glam it up." Laughter rippled. I stared at my drink. The room tilted just slightly. Rachel wasn't finished. "Seriously though, Em, your hustle is inspiring. I mean, 3 jobs, you should do a TED Talk." Another round of chuckles. I raised my glass and nodded. What else could I do? Call her out? Ruin her party? Cry? No, I smiled like a pro. Later, as the crowd swarmed the cake table, I stepped into the hallway. I leaned against the doorframe of what used to be my apartment staircase. It had been gated off. "Converted into a reading nook," someone said earlier. Books lined the wall now, not mine. I traced a finger along the wood trim. I remembered the first night I moved in, sleeping on the floor with a thrifted blanket and too much hope. That Emma had been soft, eager, open. I didn't feel like her anymore. As I stood there, a small voice broke the moment. "You okay?" It was Maya. I hadn't even known she was coming. She stood beside me in a cobalt dress, eyes full of concern and something else, pride maybe. I nodded slowly. "I'm okay, just needed a breather." "You handled that toast like a queen," she said. "Funny. I thought Rachel was the queen." Maya smiled. "Only of rented thrones." We both laughed, quiet, real laughter. The kind that cracks something open. Before leaving, I took one last look at the space. The shimmer, the noise, the faux glamour version of success. Then I slipped out the side door, heels clicking softly on the pavement. Outside, the air was cooler, cleaner. I walked home slowly. Not because I was sad, but because I realized I didn't want that life anymore. I wanted mine. It didn't hit me right away. The party, the speech, Rachel's glitter-coated digs, all of it felt like a mosquito bite I could scratch off and keep walking. But something shifted afterward, quietly and without warning, like a tide pulling away before a storm. It started the next morning when I missed my barista shift. I'd never done that, not once. But I opened my eyes to the 10 a.m. sun slanting through the blinds and felt nothing. No panic, no guilt, just weight. Like my limbs had been filled with sand. The phone buzzed twice, then stopped. I didn't reach for it. That day passed in fragments, me on the mattress, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, reheating the same rice from 2 nights ago, staring at my vision board without actually seeing it. The next day was the same. I told myself I was just catching up on rest, that my body needed to crash, that I deserved this. But by the 3rd day, something darker had moved in. I sat in the shower for 20 minutes without turning on the water. Just sat there, fully clothed, knees pulled to my chest like I could fold myself out of existence. My throat hurt from holding in whatever it was I wasn't allowing myself to feel. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Skin pale, eyes dull, shoulders curled inward like armor. It was the first time I said it out loud, not to anyone else, just to myself, in a voice barely louder than breath. "I feel like I'm disappearing." That night, after forcing myself to eat something, toast with peanut butter, I opened my laptop and typed "Free Therapy Cleveland" into the search bar. I hovered over the first link for a long time before clicking. Willow Street Mental Health Clinic's sliding scale. Walk-ins welcome. The next morning, I put on jeans and a hoodie and took the bus. It was raining again, the kind of soft drizzle that makes the world feel quieter. I walked 2 blocks past the clinic before turning around. My fingers shook as I pulled the door open. The waiting room smelled like lavender and copy paper. A woman at the front desk handed me a clipboard without judgment. No one looked up. No one asked why I was there, which somehow made it easier. I sat across from a soft-spoken woman in her 50s named Dr. Cho. Her office was painted pale green, and she wore a sweater with a little embroidered fox on the collar. I don't remember everything she said, but I remember how she listened, like I wasn't a problem to fix, like I wasn't being dramatic. "I work 3 jobs," I told her. "I live in a room with a broken heater. I haven't had a full meal in 2 days. And last weekend, I stood in the house I used to live in while my sister mocked me in front of 50 people. I expected her to flinch, or pity me, or blink rapidly like my mother did when she wanted to change the subject. But Dr. Cho just nodded gently, "And how do you feel now?" That's when the tears came. Not loud, not violent, just slow, steady, like my body had been waiting for permission to release them. "I feel like I don't matter," I whispered. "Like I tried so hard to prove something and no one saw it, not even me anymore." She handed me a tissue. I stared at the little fox on her sweater and let the silence sit. After our session, she handed me a card with a time written on it. "Back next week," she said. "Even if nothing changes, especially if nothing changes." I nodded, took the card, clutched it in my coat pocket all the way home. That night I didn't scroll my phone, I didn't open my laptop. I didn't try to make a list or calculate how many more months I needed to save. I lit the tiny candle Maya had given me for my last birthday, the one I'd never used, afraid to waste it. It smelled like fig and bergamot and hope. And then I just sat, breathing, maybe bruised, maybe tired, but not gone. It was raining again. The kind of storm that turns the streets into rivers and the sky into a low, growling drum. I was 3 hours into filing court documents when the lights flickered for the second time that day. My shoulders were tense, my shoes soaked from earlier deliveries, and a faint headache pulsed just behind my eyes. All I wanted was to finish the stack on my desk and get home before the next wave hit. Then the office phone rang. I hesitated before picking it up. "Emma Callahan speaking. Can you come to Ms. Lindholm's office?" My stomach flipped. She rarely called people directly. Most communication came through Hannah or the department heads. My mind scrambled through everything I'd touched that day. Did I mislabel a folder, miss a court date, spill coffee on something sacred? I knocked once, then stepped inside. Ms. Lindholm sat at her desk, a glass of water in front of her and a file open beside her keyboard. The blinds were tilted just enough to let in the storm light, giving the whole room a silver glow. "Close the door," she said. I did. She looked up at me, unreadable as always. "Sit." I obeyed, hands tucked under my thighs like a nervous child. There was a long pause before she spoke. "Do you know what I appreciate most about you, Emma?" I blinked. No. You don't complain, you don't slack off. You show up, you do the work, and you don't expect gold stars." I swallowed hard, unsure where this was going. She turned the file toward me. My name was typed neatly at the top. Underneath, a summary of hours, tasks, supervisor comments. "I spoke to HR," she said. "We've had a full-time admin position open for weeks, but no one's lasted longer than a month. I want to offer it to you." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. "The pay's better. The benefits kick in after 90 days. You'd have your own desk, no more floating between departments." I sat frozen. "Emma." Yes," I said, then again louder. "Yes, I'd love that." A smile tugged at one corner of her mouth, barely there, but enough. "Good, you start Monday and take the rest of today off. You look like you haven't slept in a week." "I haven't," I admitted, surprising even myself. She chuckled once, then looked back at her monitor. "That's about to change." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside I felt something unfamiliar, steady, grounded. I rode the bus home with my jacket pressed to the window, watching droplets chase each other down the glass. For the first time in ages, I didn't scroll job listings. I didn't crunch numbers. I didn't rehearse my worth in my head. I just let the quiet settle. When I got to my room, I peeled off my wet socks and stood barefoot on the cold floor, staring at my vision board. My fingers brushed the pinned photo of the yellow bungalow, the little garden patch, the porch light. I pulled out a pen and circled it, closer. I wrote underneath. Later that week, I told Maya. We met at a diner halfway between her apartment and my job, the kind with sticky menus and vinyl booths. "You got promoted," she grinned over her fries. "See, I told you, you're a slow burn miracle." I rolled my eyes but smiled anyway. "I didn't think I'd make it through the last few months." "You didn't just make it," she said. "You moved through it, like molasses and fire." We clinked our coffee cups in a toast. That weekend, I used part of my first new paycheck to buy myself a desk lamp. It was small, gold, and curved like a question mark. I set it up beside my bed, turned it on, and watched the room glow. I slept 8 hours that night. Real, dream-filled sleep. No alarms, no anxious pacing. At my next therapy session, I told Dr. Cho everything. The job, the storm, the lamp. She smiled softly. "And how do you feel now?" I thought about it. "Like I'm not waiting to be rescued anymore," I said. "Like I finally reached the shore." She nodded. "You did, and you built the boat yourself." As I left the clinic, the rain had finally stopped. The clouds parted just enough to let in a streak of golden light, catching on wet pavement and tree bark. I stood there for a moment, blinking up at the sky. No dramatic music. No slow-motion montage. It started with a ping. I was halfway through my lunch break, tuna on wheat, no mayo, extra pickles, sitting at my new desk under the warm glow of my new lamp. A notification lit up on my phone, then another, then 10. At first, I thought something had happened at work, maybe an emergency, a scheduling update, something benign. But then Maya texted, "Maya, don't look yet if you're at work." My heart stuttered. I opened Instagram anyway. There it was, a video, already at 3,000 views. Rachel. She was at a brunch table, phone tilted artfully, gold earrings swaying. Someone, probably her best friend Leela, filmed while Rachel giggled and waved a plastic flute at the camera. "And let's take a moment," she said, eyes gleaming, "for Emma's outfit at my birthday party. You know, the wrinkled off the clearance rack look, so brave." Laughter, not from strangers. From people I once babysat, old friends, our cousins. Then Rachel leaned in, all mock sincerity. "She's out there working 3 jobs and still looking like she wrestled a Goodwill bin and lost. But hey, she's a hustler. She's living the dream, right?" More laughter. A filter of sparkles. The caption read, "Queen energy, some people never change, grindrel ragstill rags." My breath caught in my throat. I clicked through the comments. Most were emojis and inside jokes. Some offered heartless applause. One read, "This is why I don't talk to my siblings either." I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Not just from tears, but from disbelief. That she would film it, that she would post it. That she would drag me in public after already taking my home, my peace, my place. The worst part, that I felt it. That old shame, the one I thought I'd buried with every delivery, every spreadsheet, every sleepless night, came roaring back. Suddenly my office chair felt too big, my skin too tight. I stood up too fast and knocked over my coffee. "Emma," a coworker called softly. "You okay?" I wasn't. I wasn't okay. I grabbed my bag and left. For 3 days, I ghosted everything. Work, Maya, my therapist appointment. I stayed curled on my bed like a thread unraveling at the ends, watching the numbers climb. 10K views, then 20K. People resharing, memes. One account even stitched the video with a quote, "When your sibling's your humble reminder." Humiliation, once private, had become a public sport. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I stared at the wall so long I forgot the time of day. The voice in my head came back, cruel and familiar. "They'll always see you as less. No matter how hard you try, you'll never outrun where you came from." On the 3rd night, a message popped up on my phone. Simple, quiet, from Dr. Cho. "Doctor, CHO, your life isn't theirs to measure." 7 words. I stared at them for a full hour, not because I didn't believe her, but because I had forgotten how much I needed someone to say it. My life wasn't theirs to measure. Not Rachel's, not my parents'. Not the peanut gallery with champagne flutes and ring lights. Mine, just mine. I got out of bed, I brushed my teeth, I made toast and tea, and then I sat down with my vision board. The sticky notes had faded, the edges curled. The photo of the yellow bungalow was smudged from fingerprints and time. I peeled it off gently and held it between my palms. This was still the plan, not fame, not revenge, not vindication through style. Home. Not to impress anyone, but to be free. The next morning, I texted my boss and asked if I could meet with her privately. She didn't ask questions, just said, 2:30, my office. I showed up early, no makeup, no armor, just me. "I need a few days," I told her. She looked up from her laptop, one brow raised. "Everything okay?" "Not really," I admitted. "But I'm working on it." She nodded. "Take the week, and Emma," I paused at the door, "you don't owe anyone a performance. You earned this job by showing up, not by pretending to be fine." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thank you." That night, I deleted my Instagram account, not because I was hiding, but because I didn't want to measure myself in filters and likes anymore. Let them laugh. Let them sip and smirk and say what they wanted. I had survived worse, and I had a house to find. The day I closed on the house, no one knew but me. No big announcement. No champagne toast. No Instagram post with a caption about grit and grace. Just me, a set of keys, and a quiet gasp as I stood on the front steps and realized it was mine. The yellow bungalow from my vision board wasn't exactly the same. That one had a wraparound porch. This one had chipped siding and a doorbell that didn't work. But it had hardwood floors, a little garden bed in the front, and most importantly, it had silence. Not the kind of silence that feels like rejection. The kind that feels like peace. I pressed the key into the lock with hands that shook a little, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of how far I'd come. The door creaked open. My sneakers stepped onto the floorboards, and for a second I didn't move, just stood there taking it in. The air smelled like dust and something old, like cedar closets and quiet weekends. The walls were bare. The outlets were crooked. One of the windows had a tiny crack in the corner like a spider web, but it was perfect. No one had handed this to me. No one had brokered it behind my back or gifted it with conditions. Every tile, every square foot, every inch of the mortgage mine. I walked through each room like I was memorizing a dream before waking. The kitchen was small but bright. The living room had a little corner just wide enough for a bookshelf and a chair. I paused there. This would be my reading nook. I'd imagined it so many nights when the world felt like it was eating me alive. Just me and a book and a lamp. No one interrupting, no one demanding I explain myself. In the back was a door that led to a tiny patio. Grass poked through the stones. Weeds climbed the fence like eager guests. I smiled. This will be my garden. That night I brought over a single bag, the same one I'd shown up with at Maya's doorstep what felt like a lifetime ago. I unpacked one mug, one bowl, one fork. I set them carefully on the counter like sacred things. I didn't have much furniture yet. Just a futon from a thrift store, 2 folding chairs, and a collapsible table. But when I made myself tea and sat cross-legged on the floor, it felt like the softest seat in the world. No one was coming to visit, and I didn't want them to. There was power in the solitude, a grace in the quiet. For once, I didn't feel the need to narrate my achievement for anyone else's approval. Rachel's voice didn't echo here. My parents' silence didn't take up space. This was not a set for their applause or their jealousy. This was a home, my home. That first weekend, I opened all the windows and let the breeze roll through every room. I lit the fig and bergamot candle from my therapy night. I played music not loud, just enough to fill the corners with sound. And I danced. No choreography, no rhythm really. Just me swaying like a tree in the wind, arms out, toes bare, heart full. I didn't invite Maya right away. Not because I didn't love her, but because I wanted to live in it first, privately. To let the walls get used to me. To hear the creaks at night and not be afraid. To sit on the floor and write a grocery list with a smile. One morning, I walked outside barefoot with a cup of coffee and stood in the garden patch, imagining basil here, tomatoes there. Maybe lavender again, this time without anyone to rename it. When the mail came, I pulled it from the box and just stared. Electric bill. Water setup. A letter from the city welcoming me to the neighborhood. Every envelope had my name. Emma Callahan. Not CO parents or room 4B or Atten applicant, just me. I whispered it aloud just to hear how it sounded in my own ears. My house. That afternoon, I printed the photo from my vision board one last time. This time, I used the real image, the porch, the fence, the crooked mailbox. I taped it to my fridge. Underneath, I wrote, "Arrived." No emojis, no hashtags, no audience. I didn't post about the house. I didn't make an announcement. No cryptic captions. No look who made it moment, but word got out anyway. Cleveland is small that way, especially when your family is as theatrical as mine. A neighbor mentioned seeing me carry in furniture. A cousin spotted me at the local hardware store, loading mulch into the trunk of my beat-up Honda. Then someone tagged me in a neighborhood group post. New homeowner on Marlowe Street, anyone know her? She seems sweet. The text started slow. A ping from Mom, then another. Then a missed call from Dad. 2 days later, a message from Rachel of all people. "Rachel, heard you got a house. Wow, we should come see it sometime. The boys would love a yard." She added a winking emoji like we were in on some inside joke I didn't remember agreeing to. I stared at the screen for a long time. In the past, I would have frozen, waited, rehearsed a response a dozen times before deleting it. But now I just breathed. I didn't owe them access. I didn't owe them my porch or my patio or my peace. Still, curiosity tugged. Part of me wondered what they wanted. Part of me knew. I typed slowly. "Emma, you're welcome to visit. But only if you come as guests, not as judges." I hit send. No smiley face, no softened edges. Rachel didn't respond right away. Neither did my parents. But 3 days later, a new message came, this time from Mom. "Mom, we'd love to come by, just us. If you're comfortable, let us know." I waited 2 more days, then gave a date. A time. Sunday afternoon. Bright, clear, with a breeze. I didn't clean obsessively. I didn't redecorate. I didn't stress about which cups to use. I set out lemonade and cookies from a local bakery. I lit the fig candle again. I wore a simple silk blouse I'd thrifted last month. No heels, no mascara, just earrings and bare feet on my own hardwood floors. At 3:04, the doorbell buzzed. I opened it and saw them, Mom in a soft gray cardigan, Dad in his usual Sunday khakis, and Rachel trailing behind in oversized sunglasses. Her boys stayed home. I stepped back, letting them in. "Come on in." They hesitated just a second too long, like they weren't sure what version of me would greet them on the other side. What they found was a home with pale yellow walls, sheer curtains fluttering, and light pouring through clean windows. A bookshelf, a real couch, a small table set for four. No grandeur, no gloss, but everything in it was mine. Mom's eyes flicked from the framed prints on the walls to the kitchen island I built from scratch with Maya's help. "This is lovely," she said. Her voice cracked on the last syllable. Dad nodded, eyes still scanning the space like it was a puzzle. Rachel stepped inside slowly, her sunglasses still on. "Didn't realize the street had houses this cute," she said. Then, softer, "You did all this alone." I tilted my head. "I did it without anyone's permission. That counts." She looked at me, and for the first time I saw it, not disdain, not superiority. Jealousy. They took their seats. I poured lemonade. We talked, stilted at first, then smoother. They asked questions. I answered. I asked none in return. I didn't explain where I got the money. I didn't describe my job. I didn't fill in the blanks of the last year, because if they wanted to understand, they'd have asked when it mattered. Instead, I offered them cookies and small talk. Rachel wandered into the backyard and ran her fingers over the tiny herbs growing in their planter boxes. "You really planted all this?" I nodded from the doorway. "I like seeing things grow when you care for them." She didn't reply. Mom stood at the bookshelf and picked up one of my framed notes from therapy, something Dr. Cho once wrote on a sticky pad. "Survival is not the prize, peace is." Her eyes lingered there for a long time. When they left an hour later, they each hugged me. Mom's was tight. Dad's was awkward. Rachel's was brief. None of them said, "I'm sorry," but none of them called me dramatic either. As I closed the door behind them, I locked it softly and leaned against it, not in exhaustion but in certainty. This wasn't their house to measure. Not anymore. It wasn't even a win I needed to prove. It was home, on my terms, with my name on the deed and my voice in every corner. They came once. Just once. That Sunday visit was the first and last time my family stepped foot inside my house. There were no follow-ups. No invites returned. No attempts at connection beyond a few lukewarm texts from my mother asking how I liked the area. But I didn't need them to like it. I needed them to see it. And they did. Because ever since that visit, something shifted. Quietly. Subtly. In the undertones of their words and the pauses between them. The next family group text came with a different flavor. Rachel no longer posted selfies from my old attic. She started posting from brunch spots and hotel lobbies. Her captions got longer, her tone a little more performative, a little more unsure. Mom sent me a forwarded article one day. "Why young women are buying homes alone." No message, just the link. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because the message had already been sent, from my floorboards, my porch, my reading nook lit by that gold lamp I bought myself. They saw the life I made. And they saw they weren't in it. And that was the moment everything truly changed. Not the promotion, not the keys, not even the therapy breakthroughs. It was when I finally stopped craving their approval. Not out of bitterness, out of peace. I still went to therapy. Still kept the appointment card pinned near the fridge. Dr. Cho and I no longer talked about survival. We talked about expansion. About joy. About what it meant to build a life that wasn't built in spite of anyone, but simply because I could. Maya came over for dinner one Friday night. We sat on floor cushions, drinking wine out of mismatched mugs and eating pasta that stuck to the pot because I forgot to stir it. She looked around and said, "Do you realize you did it?" I looked back at her, fork in hand. "Did what?" "This, all of it. You became the person no one thought you'd be." I smiled. "I became the person I needed me to be." I still worked hard, still budgeted carefully, but I no longer carried myself like someone waiting to be rescued. My steps were firm. My voice didn't tremble. Sometimes on early mornings, I'd walk through the quiet rooms barefoot, coffee in hand, and just listen. To nothing. No criticism. No layered expectations. No noise I didn't choose. One Saturday, I opened an old box I'd stored under my bed. Photos, notes, scraps of the girl I used to be. Tucked inside was a folded printout from my first vision board. My own home, written in Sharpie, with a drawing of stick figure Emma smiling beside a house. I pressed it flat and taped it to the inside of a kitchen cabinet, not as a reminder of what I lacked, but as a tribute to what I refused to let go of. And then one morning it came full circle. I stepped outside to find Rachel standing on the sidewalk alone. No car, no entourage, just her in a simple black coat, looking unsure. "Was driving by," she said, as if this was casual. I crossed my arms. "You were an hour outside the city." She hesitated. "I've been thinking a lot about things." I waited. I wasn't going to fill the silence for her. Finally, she met my eyes. "You really did it." I nodded. "I did." She took a breath. "I guess I thought you'd come back eventually, asked to move back in, that you'd break." I tilted my head slightly. "I did break, but I rebuilt." She didn't ask to come inside, and I didn't offer. We stood there for a beat longer, sisters bound by history, not by trust. She finally said, "Well, it's a nice house." "It's not for showing off," I replied. "It's for living in." She nodded, lips tight. "Okay," she said quietly. "Take care, Em." And just like that, she walked away. No apology. But I didn't need one anymore, because forgiveness had nothing to do with her. It had everything to do with me stepping into a life where I never had to earn space again. As the wind picked up and leaves danced across the walkway, I stepped back inside my home, my walls, my roof, my sanctuary. I closed the door with no anger in my chest, just certainty that I had made it, not as a performance, not as revenge, but as proof. That peace doesn't need permission, and neither did I.